How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
My fellow Americans, we're finally here. Praise the Lord. It'll all be done in a few hours. Have you voted yet? I hope you have. Listen, I'm going to do something today in large part because obviously the news, it's a little light today. I'm sure a lot of you have questions. I'm happy to answer your questions about the election, 877-973-7425. Most important of all, I just emailed you, if you're on my newsletter, the most useful thing you're going to get today. And it is a breakdown of what time the polls close, what counties you should be keeping an eye on nationwide, the list of Senate seats at play, the list of swing seats in the House of Representatives. It is all there. It is compiled for you. I have been working on this since Saturday, and I just emailed it out to my Substack list. If you want to get a copy of it, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. The very top link will take you to my Substack, and you can see this list. It is the most comprehensive email you're going to get today from anybody on the lay of the land, and we're going to spend some time talking about it today. I want to tell you this out of the gate, though, having been a political consultant, having run campaigns, today is a day where you all think that I, your host, have some sort of secret knowledge and that everybody else does as well. And the reality is nobody does. Everybody kind of flies blind. I can tell you I was up until about 1 o'clock this morning talking to people across the aisle, political consultants on both sides. Here's the general consensus from everyone. In the last week, the Madison Square Garden event for Donald Trump started with Tony Hinchcliffe and then going through everyone else on stage, and it took Trump off message, and that has hurt him at the end with people who were still making up their mind. And believe it or not, there are people. They're emotionally driven. They're not rational people. And these people at the end shifted to Kamala Harris, and you've seen a tightening in the late polls because of that. The prevailing consensus, however, is that so many Americans have voted already that it may not matter, and Donald Trump probably has a slight edge, and here's why. Let's take the cannibalized vote. That is a fun new term I'm using, derived from other people, the cannibalized vote. And that is Election Day voters who shifted to the early vote. When you look at the states where a majority of voters have already voted, such that you can't get more voters today. You can, if 55% of the voters have already voted, you're not going to get a 55% turnout today because it's impossible with the number of registered voters. So look at the states that have surpassed the 50% mark and see what's happening. And there are some patterns in the cannibalized vote. My friend Patrick Ruffini, an excellent pollster and data analyst, has this. So, for example, North Carolina already had 4.2 million people vote. What's left in the total registered voter pool is 1.4 million possible people. Given that pool, the early vote leaned Republican barely. The day of pool should lean Democrat barely, but that should give the Republicans a slight edge compared to 2020. Arizona, this is kind of one of the ones that blows my mind. 2.03 million people have already voted in Arizona. That's R plus 7.6% compared to the Democrats. In the tank left, they got 1.479 million voters left who can vote, and that's still Republican plus 6.9%. which should see a shift to the GOP by about a percentage point compared to 2020. In Florida, this is the most incredible one. In Florida, 7.5 million people have already voted. There are only 3.6 million people left who can vote in Florida. That should go from a Republican +5 in 2020 to a Republican +8 in 2024, based on the outstanding number of people and their voter registration. In Nevada, this one's kind of wild. 1.07 million people have already voted. There are 355,000 total voters left who can vote in Nevada. You heard that right. There are only 355,000 voters left in Nevada who can vote today. That shifts Nevada from a 0.6% advantage in 2020 to a Republican 2.6% advantage now. Now, the Democrats in Nevada say the Clark County, Harry Reid-built machine will turn out enough voters to help Kamala Harris, but a lot of people on the outside aren't so sure. But we're seeing this trend play out in other states as well. So, for example, in California, 6.5 million people have already voted, but there are still 10.6 million people out there to vote. Given the performance of California in the past to now and what's outstanding, the Democrats are going to have a 20 percentage point lead on the GOP, but that's down 3 points from 2020. In Oregon, 1.1 million people have already voted. Now, keep in mind, Oregon's completely vote by mail. That means there are outstanding 1.2 million ballots left to come in Oregon. But in that case, that shifts us from a Democrats up 10% to Democrats up 9%. In North Carolina, we're going to see a slightly wider turnout. We're going to see slightly less black turnout. We're going to see a little bit of an uptick in Hispanic voters. In Georgia, this is the most mind-boggling one. 3.8 million people in Georgia have already voted. That leaves 1.25 million people left to vote. The 2020 electorate was 30% black. If black voters show up today, the best they're going to do is 29.5%. The Hispanic vote will go up 0.4 points from 4.6 to 5%. The white vote will decline by 0.2%. That's still good for the GOP. I can't tell you what's happening on the ground. In fact, I got panicked text messages from people this morning. There are no lines. There are no lines. This is a disaster. There are no lines. Well, yeah, but I mean, 3/4 of the people in your county already voted. Of course there are no lines this morning. Calm down. But a buddy of mine over near Auburn, Alabama, said the line wraps around his election precinct for the first time that he can remember. It wasn't like this 4 years ago. There's a line literally circling the building. Nobody really knows anything, though. Looking at the cannibalized vote, though, there is a trend, and that trend is about a 2% shift nationwide to the GOP compared to 2020. The black vote is down in states where it shouldn't be. I kind of do wonder if Kamala Harris yesterday was campaigning as much as she was in Pennsylvania, not to save herself, but to save Bob Casey. The Democrats are sounding caution today. The Republicans are a little bit exuberant. I will tell you this, and this is one thing, don't be mad at me for saying, but it's the truth. And I heard this from one of the senior Trump people. Last week, before things kicked off with the distractions of Madison Square Garden, they were pretty sure they had this won. And one of the senior strategists for the Trump campaign tells me he feels like they got ahead of their skis starting with the Madison Square Garden rally, which sounded more like a victory rally than a persuasive pitch to vote. Meanwhile, though Joe Biden uttered his garbage comment, Kamala Harris largely stayed on her message in the last week. That's from the Trump campaign team. That's not from me. Their sense, however, is still that they have enough banked early votes and they tend to dominate on Election Day that the Republicans should be okay. Here's the other thing. I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, and now I've got real data again from my buddy Patrick Ruffini. The Ann Selzer poll I mentioned to you yesterday does not account for people's education. Likewise, in Pennsylvania, the Research Dynamics poll, I think it is, and several others, they don't account for people's education. And in the polls that don't account for people's education, Kamala Harris is doing very well. But when you start factoring in and I shouldn't say that, the college educated and the working class, the non-college degreed versus the college degreed versus the professional degree, the more education you have, the more likely you are to vote Democrat. The less post-high school education you have, the more likely you are to vote Republican. In the polls that consider people's education in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump has a 2% to a 5% lead. In the polls that do not account for the education makeup of the voters, Kamala Harris is tied or ahead. My suspicion continues to be, and this is the suspicion of more and more pollsters I've talked to and of Democratic and Republican strategists I've talked to, that white liberal women love to talk to pollsters. As I said yesterday, they love to talk to pollsters. And if that's the case, the polls that are not taking into account the educational pedigree of the voter are probably undercounting Trump's vote again, which gives him a slight edge on Election Day. But I don't know, nor does anyone else know. This election is very close. I've never seen anything like it where the partisan pundits, outside of the diehard supporters, they're not out beating their chest this time saying, my guy's going to win, my guy's going to win. Everybody's like, I think my side's going to win, but it's going to be close. And it's true. Why? Because in the final polling models from 538, from Decision Desk HQ, from Nate Silver, it's basically a coin toss. It's basically 50-50. That's why you've got to go vote. If you haven't voted today, you got to go vote. That is your obligation today as an American citizen. Go vote in your democracy. Now, there are other stories out there I do want to talk about today. One thing I want to put on your radar, if you will recall, and I know a number of you emailed me, you tweeted me about it, there was the video that was circulated last week. It was a group of Haitian men in a car in Georgia. They showed their Georgia driver's licenses. They explained they had been in the country for 6 months. They were here under that refugee program for Haitians, and they were voting in Georgia. They were registered to vote. I saw a committee woman for the Republican National Committee in Georgia circulate it, going after Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger. I saw a good friend of mine from Missouri circulate it, saying, what the hell is this? What's going on here? This can't be right. The man from Massachusetts who first loaded that onto the internet is admitting he took $100 from a Russian PSYOPs team to put it online. The Georgia Secretary of State came out pretty forcefully after the video came out and said, we believe this is Russian disinformation. The guy in Massachusetts has now told authorities that, yes, he was paid to put that piece on the internet. Didn't think he was breaking the law doing it. It's not true. What are the surprises today? I'll tell you one surprise, and I cannot believe your host, of all people, is saying this. Kari Lake could get swept across the finish line in Arizona because of Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to work through my email with you because I prepared a very comprehensive show notes email for you. Literally, I started it on Saturday. The poll closing times in every state, what battlegrounds are up, how many electoral college votes are up for grabs every hour, what polls they are, the Senate races, the key House races. We'll walk through all that, give you a deep dive in this. I'm happy to take your phone calls as well, 877-973-7425. However, I got a few more things I want to talk to you about before we get started with your phone calls, and we do need to talk about the Russians and the Chinese that are both out there looking to be in a stronger military alliance to take down the United States, including the Russians testing improvised explosive devices to take down commercial airliners flying into the United States. All big stories. We can't let the election distract us from what else is going on in the world. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I am happy to have you. Listen, I really genuinely put in the work, and I hope you will consider the work that was done for you. And that is, I spent a lot of time compiling an email for you today that has all the poll closing times by the hour, which states close when, which hour has battleground states that close, how many electoral college votes are at stake, the census map shift from the 2020 electoral college to the 2024 electoral college, all the Senate races that are at stake, one special election out of Nebraska, 33 other races, all the swing seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, and all the data I can get for you. And it's very easy to get this. All you have to do is text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, and I will send you back the link so you have it all day to refer to as to what hour such and such a state closes, how many electoral college votes per hour are at stake, when do the swing states close. I'll walk you through all of that, and I'm happy to take your phone calls, 877-973-7425. When we come back, though, I do want to do a little bit of a reset with you so that we're not missing the important stuff. And in particular, the reason to focus on that important stuff is because I think there's a lot of news that gets drowned out by Election Day. We as Americans tend to be self-absorbed, and I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. We're the country that matters most on planet Earth. But we've spent a lot of weeks talking about the election now at the expense of a lot of other news that's happening out there, and I've tried my best to highlight all the other news. There are some stories out there, though, and I do want to do a little bit of a reset with you when we get back. I think it's important. If you have calls about the election, the process, things like that, I'm very happy to take those questions. If you're calling to argue about fluoride, dear Lord, the crazy people went crazy on Instagram last night about fluoride. I'm not going to take the fluoride calls. Wow. Kind of made my point. Nonetheless, we do have other stuff besides the election happening out there, and I want to cover that. Do some resets with you. I hope you'll get this email. I do want to walk you through the email today, the poll closing, so you know what to look for. And remember, the exit polling is starting to leak out right now. Do not believe the exit polling right now that leaks out. You're starting to see it online. Don't believe it. Why? Because it's unadjusted. It is not adjusted, and it always skews to the Democrats. It always has skewed to the Democrats. Keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind, you can go to oldglory.com today and get yourself a bank account, oldglorybank.com. Go to oldglorybank.com. It takes less than 8 minutes to get a bank account at this fantastic bank by conservatives for conservatives. Now, why does it matter? It matters because, one, I do like supporting great conservative businesses, but two, Old Glory Bank, unlike a lot of other banks, is definitely not woke, and you're going to be able to use your debit card to buy a gun if you want to. In fact, if you're a small business run by conservatives, you may want them as your business bank. They can work with you on mortgages, business loans, car loans, CDs. They've got great interest rates on their savings account. You can get it all, full-service bank, oldglorybank.com. By the way, they have a fantastic app and debit card system as well. I have used it. I am a member. I have had a bank account with them for over a year, well before they were an advertiser. I think I'm their first national advertiser. I lobbied them hard for this. I love Old Glory Bank. You will too. oldglorybank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. oldglorybank.com. Greetings. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, it is Election Day. I got to be honest with you. Election Day is that one day. It's like the Super Bowl of political nerds, but also that doesn't happen until after the sun goes down. So we got to fill some time. I got stuff to talk about, though. But, I kind of miss when I was a political consultant. I was running races. I just lay in a hammock all day with a cooler full of beer, and now I got to be on radio with you people. It's okay. I want to take a couple of phone calls here before I move on. I want to go to Jasper first. Welcome, Jasper. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
What's up?
My question is, I have a Chinese friend that lives here that is a United States citizen, registered voter. She speaks very little English. She reads very, very little English. And she wants to know if I can assist her at the voting booth to help her put her vote in.
I you got to talk to the poll workers. I think you are allowed assistance. But you gotta you gotta be with her and talk to the poll worker, and she's got to say she needs assistance.
Okay.
But they'll tell you. And by the way, they're not going to mess with you. They don't really care whether you're voting Republican or Democrat. They're the poll workers today. They're senior citizens who have done this for years. Just ask them.
And the biggest reason is I don't want a Fed come knocking on my door a year from now saying I voted twice.
Yeah. No. You won't have that problem at all. Just go to the poll worker, let her explain she needs assistance, and you should be okay.
And I did call the county of Cherokee, and they said yes. And I would like to put this out there. There's only a couple of counties in the state of Georgia that have different languages, such as Spanish and Chinese. Cherokee County does not have it. They should be on all the machines, in my opinion.
Yeah, given their computers, they should be able to do that. Yeah, Jasper, thanks for the phone call. They should be able to do that. Now, look, y'all hit pause here. Let me chat with you for a moment. I would normally have started the show with this, but I've been inundated with hundreds of people already. Y'all, I woke up at 6:30 this morning and already had about 20 messages. What are you hearing? What are you hearing? What are you hearing? Polls had only opened 30 minutes before in my state. If you read my morning piece this morning, you know where I'm headed, but I do want to say this. This is going to happen again in 4 years. The level of hysteria out there today from people is nuts. This is Oprah Winfrey talking last night at the Kamala Harris rally.
Cast a ballot again. If we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible that we will not have the opportunity to ever cast a ballot again.
That's just a stupid person. Oprah Winfrey is a stupid person to say that. It's absolutely stupid. Joe Rogan and Elon Musk had a conversation yesterday where they said basically the same thing, that the country's over, there will be no more elections if Kamala Harris wins. That is a stupid thing to say. These are billionaire people in billionaire bubbles, and they are stupid people if they believe that Oprah Winfrey should be ashamed of herself lying to people. This is John Meacham on MSNBC. Why they have not had a normal day at MSNBC today.
Was if Huey Long had become president, if George Wallace had become president, and that he was a recognizable phenomena within the American story, an embodiment, yes, of our worst impulses, but the fullest manifestation of things we had seen and dealt with. Mm-hmm. What he proved to me in the post-election period in 2020 was that he was a unique threat. Strike the verb tense. He is a unique threat to the constitutional order.
That's John Meacham on MSNBC and Michael Beschloss, a presidential historian.
And if people are allowed to go on television and say what they think in the future, which again, that question is open this morning, in the future, historians are going to look back on this day and say, this is the day that America made a choice between freedom and democracy on one side and authoritarianism and dictatorship on the
Michael?
other.
Y'all, these people are unhinged. This is like my number one, God's honest truth, cross my heart, hope to die. My number one reason for hoping Trump pulls off a win tonight is because I am emotionally invested in watching the emotional carnage play out on MSNBC tonight if he wins. I really do think the whole network will pack up and move to Ottawa and will do MSNBC in exile for 4 years. And they'll come back in 4 years as if it never happened. And listen to this. This guy for Kamala Harris, the dude needs testosterone shots. Starts crying on CNN.
Who'd you vote for today?
I voted for Kamala Harris.
Why is that?
I have 3 daughters, 4 children overall, and women's rights is pretty important to them and my daughters. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional about that. I didn't think that I was going to do that. But, just their bodies, their choice type of a mentality,
Really? So the man went to vote for his daughters to be able to murder his grandchildren. Wow. Real normal one. Wow. His husband was not there with him to say how he voted. Y'all, it's going to be okay. One side listening right now is going to lose this election. It's not going to be stolen. The fact that so many of the Trump supporters were already out there, if he doesn't win, it's stolen, is just you don't really care. It's team sport to you. It's like yelling or roughing the refs. You don't really care. It's like the people who circulated the video of the Haitians claiming they were in Georgia. You don't really care about the truth. You care about your team. If he loses, he's going to lose because in the last week of the campaign, he went off the rails in his messaging. But it doesn't matter. We're going to do this all over again in 4 years. If you believe, and I need you to know this, if you believe that this is it, that we will not have an election in 4 years if your guy doesn't win, I need you to understand you probably need some therapy because you are worshiping idols and you have twisted your whole life to politics. In 4 years, we're going to do this all over again. In 4 years, there will be another election. For those of you who are partisans, if your side loses, it's going to suck for you for 4 years. There are going to be a lot of policies you don't like. Congress is going to be divided. The GOP is going to pick up the Senate today. So if Kamala Harris wins, there's going to be very little she can do that can't be undone by executive order in 4 years. If Donald Trump wins, Congress is going to be divided. He'll pick up the Senate, but he won't have enough to overcome the filibuster. And so guess what? In 4 years, anything that he does by executive order can be undone. Now, because Looper Bright has overruled the Chevron decision, the regulators won't have a free rein to do what they want to do on immigration, on regulating the internet, on anything. The fact that we are in the 21st century, more than 200 years after the founding of our republic, in existential terror over who might win the presidential election should be an indicator to all of us, left, right, and center, that the presidency has gotten too powerful and Congress should do its job and rein it in. It's time for Congress to step up. But whoever wins, they're only going to be there for 4 years. If it's Donald Trump, that's it. No more terms for Donald Trump if he wins. That's it. If Donald Trump loses, he has every reason to lose gracefully. In fact, I see Nigel Farage is advising him, hey, man, if you lose, accept the results. Otherwise, you're going to jail. He's right. His sentencing hearing is postponed for another week or two. If he loses, he's going to go to jail. He better be gracious and mitigate that and stop him from sending him to jail. He's got every reason to say it's not stolen. It's the will of the people. I'm going home to Mar-a-Lago. I'll cry a few days and get over it and go play golf. If Kamala Harris loses, well, she can go back to California and cackle all the way there. But in 4 years, we'll do it over again. In 2 years, we'll do the midterms. If Kamala Harris is president in 2 years, the Democrats are going to get brutalized by Republicans in the midterms. If Donald Trump is president in 2 years, you have no idea how awful the midterms will be for the GOP. But the presidency is only 4 years. We're not, contrary to MSNBC, we're not installing a dictator. You're going to get policies you don't like, and those policies will affect you. You'll get tax increases. Maybe you'll get tariffs with Donald Trump, wreck the economy with tariffs. With Kamala Harris, the Education Department and Health and Human Services, they're going to bully and badger conservatives who pray at abortion clinics. The Department of Justice is going to harass them for 4 years. But on a meaningful daily basis, your school board still matters more. The education of your children there, your city council, the pothole in front of your house. But more importantly, how you and your neighbor treat each other matters way more than the President of the United States. We can survive 4 years. We're Americans. The country's not going to end if your guy loses. But your whole town breaks down when you and your neighbors decide to hate each other instead of loving each other. And you feel the turmoil in the country first in your local community. So by now, virtually everyone listening knows where to go vote. You've either voted or you're going to go vote. I hope you will vote. If you can't bring yourself to vote for either of these two people, go vote, but leave that line blank. There are plenty of good people running. Go support the good people. But go vote. Going to vote and leaving a line blank is actually very powerful because it shows the parties that our candidate was unacceptable. But go vote. Be a part of the process. It's a blessing of liberty that we live in a country where we get to go do this. We have ballots instead of bullets to change our country. So go vote. But after you go vote, do me a favor. Find out where your local soup kitchen is. Find out where your local food pantry is. Find out where your local women's shelter is. Find out where the local homeless shelter is. Get involved there. If you don't want to get involved, write a check. Put your money there. Because where your money is tends to be where your heart goes. And so seek the welfare of the city in which you live. We're going to pick a president again in 4 years. Every 4 years, people on the left and the right say, if it doesn't go my way, this is it. It's the end of the country. And then 4 years later, they're back to, if it doesn't go my way, it's the end of the country. And then 4 years later, it's the end of the country if it doesn't go my way. And every 4 years, we have this conversation all over again. But in the meantime, you got a soup kitchen that needs help. You got a food pantry that needs food. Thanksgiving is coming. You got a homeless shelter that could use some supplies. You've got a local community where you live that is desperate for as much attention as you give this presidential race to give to it. And if you're not willing to be invested in your local community, not even write a check, to not support the local charities from the local groups who are helping the homeless, helping the battered women, helping the children, helping feed the poor. If you're not willing to do that, you're just willing to go vote, you're not actually willing to change the country. You're abdicating your power to change the country to someone else in Washington, D.C., who is going to affect your daily basis far less than the people around you in your community, and you're not willing to help them? Well, don't think the country's ever going to get better if you yourselves are not going to put in some sweat equity or some financial interest to helping your local community. Seek the welfare of the city in which you live, because there you'll find your welfare. And in the meantime, don't be so whipped into existential frenzy and terror about a presidential election that you get distracted by today. The 15th of the Screw Tape Letters says the goal of the devil is to keep you whipped into a terror about tomorrow. Because if you're here now in the present, that's the closest you'll ever be to God until you're in heaven. So when you're so worried about the future and the election and the outcome and what it may look like, you're not appreciating the blessings of today. In the meantime, you got a whole backyard behind you that's a mission field that is more meaningful and relevant to you today than a presidential election. So go vote, but then plug into your local community and don't just abdicate it to Washington, D.C. It's one of the lessons you'll learn from Hillsdale College. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com and get the Pocket Constitution from them, you can see our founders were really committed to this federalism idea. You can hear that from Hillsdale College as well. In Imprimis, there are regular series about you gotta pay attention to your backyard. Localism is a good thing. We shouldn't cede localism to the left. Hillsdale College has had this mission since the 1800s to educate Americans wherever they are. That's why they give so much content away for free. It's why they were one of the first education institutions in America to desegregate. They want Americans to know about America, to love America, like Larry Arnn and Hillsdale College loves America. And you can get so much of their programming for free by going to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Go to ericforhillsdale.com today, sign up for Imprimis, get the podcast, get their lectures on the Constitution, get the free Pocket Constitution. Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you're buying a building, expanding, buying franchises, need a heavy equipment loan, things like that, they help businesses. First Liberty Building and Loan has been making their own decisions since the 90s. They'd love to help you. Reach out to them, firstlibertyga.com. Robert, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking my call, and I'm
Sure.
glad to hear that your problems are over with, hopefully with no pain. Admittedly, an unlikely scenario, what's the possibility that neither Trump nor Harris will received 270 votes in the Electoral College, and under the 12th Amendment, this matter would be resolved by a vote in the House of Representatives.
Yes. Okay, so here's how it works. If this were to be a 269 to 269 tie and goes to the House of Representatives, what would happen is each state would get a single vote. And so it would be the majority of the congressional delegation. So here's the thing people don't understand is that the Democrats could take the House of Representatives, but the majority of the states actually have a Republican majority delegation. So how does that actually work? Well, you got 26 states, and the majority of those states have Republican majority delegations, but you got places like California, New York with a lot of votes. So California's got 54, New York's got 28. The state still only gets a single vote. So the California delegation, the majority of them may say, well, we're going for Harris, and New York says we're going for Harris. But Idaho and Montana and North Dakota and South Dakota and Texas and Florida and Georgia and the like say, well, we're going to go for Trump. And so, yeah, in a 269 tie, the advantage goes to Donald Trump. However, then you got to go to the United States Senate to pick the vice president, and that might help Tim Walz. I haven't run the numbers there, but I actually think it wouldn't. But, yeah, there's a wild card scenario there as well. Now, when we come back, let me explain popular vote versus electoral college. How does all this stuff work? Let me give you the basics when we come back. And again, if you want to follow along with me, I sent out a detailed show. Y'all, I have worked on this since Saturday. I'm not making that up. If you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, I think the very first link is the show notes. Click on that, go into the very top story, and it is what I sent out at noon. It is a breakdown of the Electoral College, what time the polls close, the Senate races, all that. I'll work through that with you, and I'll explain by popular demand, Fisher, the difference in how it works. Popular vote versus Electoral College. Boy, a lot of people are asking that one today. I'll explain it to you so you can be smarter than all of your friends when it comes to this election. And then we'll get to the Russians trying to blow up airliners. And Bernie Marcus, the founder of Home Depot, one of the founders of Home Depot, has passed away here in Atlanta.